YouTube? What is up? It is another day in Universe X, and today we are going to finally jump back into the everything you need to know about the series, and this time we're doing it for set 2. I think it's going to be a good point to be at this point of content creation because next month it is almost event after event after event after event, so I think this is the most prudent time to kind of get it in. That being said, I want to let everybody know that we are on track. I think in the next 2 days, 1 or 2 days, we should be announcing the UTA deck winners, the film deck winners. Sorry, it's late in March, which is very, very busy. And then we'll be diving into all sorts of content. I think even today, we got some Battle Spirit Saga content coming up. I need to craft up how I want to go about Dragon Ball Super content. It's been a little tricky, but yeah. Let's actually dive in. And right before we jump into the all you need to know about playing Whitebeard, everything you need to know, just want to say that if you want to support the channel, easy, simple steps. Go down there, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit that notification button so you never miss a beat, and then lastly, comment. So, you know, we get a little discussion going. I swear I will respond to everything as soon as I have a spare moment. So, without further ado, let's hop into the main content. So let's talk Whitebeard, one of the most popular leaders currently going into this format. He is a very, very, very interesting thing because a lot of times people at first were afraid of his losing life effect. If you don't already know, Whitebeard says at the end of your turn, you must take a life to your hand. No, this does not activate triggers. You just pick up the life and you add it to your hand at the end phase of every turn. In exchange for this, Whitebeard not only starts with 6 life, but he also has 6k, and most people think, oh, that's a lot just to trade for 1,000 power, but it's actually a very, very, very much so balancing, like, just thing. Because before, think about it, my magic numbers video was all based around leaders being 5k. Now just with 6k, 8k is no longer a, sorry, 7k is no longer a safe number to drain your opponent's hand by at least 2 cards. Because if you swing for 7k at a 6k leader, a single 2k will drop it. Therefore, if you want to make assured hand drain for 2 or more cards, you have to swing at 8k, which is a lot. That's 3 dawn on your leader. That's way more dawn on other things as well. So Whitebeard changes up fundamentally the math you're going to be playing per game. Also, something you need to understand is that Whitebeard, in exchange for going down low in life, will also have some of the biggest hands you've seen in this game outside of a Law or Kid deck that has just gone way too far without their searchers being destroyed. So this is pretty crazy. He also is able to pressure very hard because 1 Dawn on him is the magic 7k against other decks. And I just dropped the card, it is what it is. But the point is, Whitebeard has a lot of nuance that a lot of players don't understand. But we're going to get into that as we go through. So Whitebeard is going to be able to defend itself better with 2Ks. It's going to be able to press better. And it's going to be able to amass a much bigger hand. And that is why you play Whitebeard. So, moving from there, we're going to talk about the 2 cores. Because like I said, well, I guess I didn't say that previously. Whitebeard has 2 different paths you can go through. And that is, 1, Strawbeard, which is a Whitebeard deck that basically mains the Straw Hat crew as its main core, and you're going to be amassing a lot of cards in hand because of Whitebeard's effect, but you're going to have cards like Nami, and Nami's going to pull this all together. So I'm going to go through the deck's options, and then after explaining the second path that you can take with Whitebeard, and then we're going to explain kind of how they come in together and play a little bit better. The second path is the Moby Dick path. RIP to the field card Gone Too Soon. This basically says that when you are at 1 or less life, all Whitebeard pirates, including your Edward Newgate leader, will gain 2,000 power. And that's during your turn. That's insane. That means your leader is going to be swinging for 8k. That means everything is going to be going sideways for bigger. And we're going to talk about, once again, the cards you can play in this deck, and then we're going to talk about how these strategies differ. Because essentially, when you're looking at these 2, Strawbeard is an all-around red good stuff deck with some Whitebeard flair, whereas Moby Dick is establish an overwhelming board position, and then when you get down to 1 life, you go off. Like, you start swinging and everything is a threat. So these are the 2 paths that you can go with this deck. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about are the Whitebeard Pirates. These are cards that generally you're going to be playing more of when you are playing the Whitebeard like Moby Dick version. One of the first cards we're going to talk about is a overall field booster. This is sorry, it's going to focus eventually. This is Rakuyo. Basically, he comes down for 3 with a single Dawn under it during your turn. All of your Whitebeard Pirates characters are going to gain 1k. This is going to be crazy because just with the Dawn under himself, he goes up to 5. With his own boost, he's going to go up to 6, and then you're going to be able to have Moby Dick just go off. And if Moby Dick is cool, this guy right here turns into a threat very, very fast. He's an 8k by himself. Yeah, all your characters with the type, including Whitebeard Pirates, gain 1k power. That is himself. So yeah, like I said, the Dawn under him goes to 5k. His own effect goes to 6k. Moby Dick activated, he's an 8k. This is just powerful. There's nothing else to say about that. And he's going to change the math for everything else you have on board. Now, we all know in this game, sometimes a well-placed vanilla goes a long way, and this deck is no different. First, we're sitting at Atmos. For a 4 cost, he's going to be a 6k stat line, making him very, very big, and with 1 Dawn, he is not able to be jet pistol during your own turn when you're swinging into life. Moby Dick is going to put him up to an 8k. If you have Rakuyo on board, he's a 9k. Just huge numbers. We're always going to be talking about the math between these 2 cards. Next up the vanilla scale, you've got the 5 cost 7k. This is King Do. King Do is going to go up to 9k with Moby Dick on board, a full 10k with Rakuyo on board. So once again, your body just get massive under the guise of Moby Dick and Rakuyo. And then you have probably the most important card in the entire deck if you're running the Moby Dick build, and that's Marco the Phoenix. He is a blocker with amazing art, mind you, and when he gets destroyed, he's going to be able to come back as long as you discard 1 Whitebeard Pirates card. That can be the field card, that can be a battle card, or a character you don't need. Excellent. But he's going to come back, and with Rakuyo on board, he's a 6k. He becomes an 8k with both him and Moby Dick on the board. So you can kind of see, you build your board wide, and once you build your board wide, you're just able to completely dumpster your opponent. And it's savage. Like, it really is. Nothing feels scarier than your opponent having more than 3 bodies on board plus their leader when Moby Dick is active, because you just know that you're going to die or your entire hand is gone to this onslaught. Now, shifting into the rushers of the deck, because this deck has a lot of rushers. First, we're going to start with Zoro. Now, you don't see Zoro in most lists. I find personally, I like taking a copy or 2 when I play Whitebeard, because a lot of people, once you play this game enough, you start gauging turns on what your opponent has available in Dawn, and a lot of people will be thinking that your rushers are going to be coming on maybe the 4 if your life is low enough, maybe the 5, you know, if you have a Luffy, maybe the 7 with Ace. But sometimes people don't account for the 3-drop menace that still is Zoro. It's just like he's in other decks. He can be played in Zoro very well, Luffy very well, but not a lot of people playing him in Whitebeard, and I feel like you can still play him in Whitebeard. Next, you have this Charmer. Jozu is crazy because Jozu is a 2k counter when the camera focuses. He's a 2k counter. He's a 4k rusher. When you're at 2 or less life at Whitebeard, you can actually put a Dawn under him and he gains rush. So this is actually really, really, really crazy because he can come down essentially for 5. He's a 5k rusher who becomes 6k with Rakuyo on board, who becomes, at this point, yeah, 8k. So yeah, with Moby Dick active, he will become a 8k when you have the Dawn on him to rush if you have the Dawn on Rakuyo. So this is pretty strong. Very, very good card. Slapshot, and I love cards in multiple purposes. The fact that he's a 2k and he can rush in a pinch, wonderful, wonderful. Next card I'm going to talk about, Luffy. Luffy is still that dude. Not only is he still the unblockable when he has 2 Dawn under him, he won't gain, you know, effects from Rakuyo or Moby Dick, but generally for playing the Moby Dick route, you're not really banking on this. But in the Whitebeard mirror matches, there are just times where, 1, he can't really be destroyed by things like they have to combo destroy him. They have to play like Otama plus Vista. And when you have this card out, sometimes he can be lights out for the opponent because the opponent can be sitting behind a blocker like a Marco or a Chopper, and you just go in and kill them through their blocks with this. he's very, very, very good. But you're already seeing between this card, this is more like you play more copies of this card when you are running the Strawbeard version, because you're going to be able to search him out with Nami. And then last, this card is very specific. You don't play this outside of Whitebeard red decks, but you have Ace. And Ace is a monster. He comes down for 7. He gives 2 things minus 3k, and he's a rusher. So there's a chance, like, not just a chance, like, one, he's a big rusher. He's going to be at 9k when Moby Dick is active. If you have Rakuyo on board, he's even stronger. But he's going to be able to come in and swing at your opponent's battle cards as well. Like if you're, well, I keep saying battle cards instead of characters. If your opponent has 2 characters tapped and you bring this in and you want them off the board, you want to play a little damage control, this guy into swinging your leader at something that's minus 3k and swinging, you know, Ace at the bigger target that's minus 3k, excellent clear. This guy is gas. Gas, gas, gas. So that's actually pretty tight. Now, moving forward into the card that you will play no matter what your build is. This is just the de facto boss of Whitebeard. It's Whitebeard. Ta-da! Surprise! And this guy is pretty crazy. He is Red's top end for the foreseeable future, and he is a monster. When it comes to Edward Newgate, he's going to come down and he's going to give your leader plus 2k. This is already a threat when you're on a 5k leader, but when you're rocking a 6k leader, 8k is a monstrous number. You already know at this point, unless your opponent's built with boss monsters, you will not be able to take damage from, like, the only 2 cards per turn will likely be able to get into the threshold of actually dealing damage. And a single 2k or Radical Beam or Guard Point will probably get over that. So this is actually just an insane card. And then when he survives, because, you know, he's 10k, nothing can remove him minus like a board wipe or a combo play from black. You're going to be able to swing with a 10k body. Well, if you want to boost him to 12k by putting 2 Dawn under him, he's going to destroy something with Robin's effect. This card is so monstrous. Then last but not least, if you are playing the Moby Dick route, he's a 12k swinger regardless. It's very hard to out-counter this, and he's just a monster. So next we're going to move on to Destruction. This deck has a plethora of it. The first card I'm going to go over is a newcomer to this set, but it's in every red deck, Vista. He has a come into play effect that's going to smoke something with 3,000 power or less, and so when he comes in, he's just going to immediately just bonk and pop something, a small blocker. This card essentially looks at your opponent's field and says, oh, you played a blocker? No, you actually didn't. And that's pretty much what this is. Killer blocker, any 1-drop blocker. Like, this guy really just gets it out of the way and then keeps it moving. So he's actually really cool. Plus he's the Whitebeard pirate, so he fits in very well with the Moby Dick strategy as well and the Rakuyos. Very, very strong card. Second, this is definitely more for if you're playing the Strawbeard version, but you got Robin. Robin, we don't need to explain it. If you're new to the game, Robin is going to basically, she's the OG red removal. When you have a Dawn under her, you're going to be able to swing and pop something with 3k or less power. So she's a top target to get rid of when she's established, because she's just a very strong card and will shift momentum very much so out of your favor. But what's more, we're not done yet with the destruction. We actually have cards like Seaquake. Seaquake is a 1 cost. You can only use if your leader has Whitebeard pirates in there, but it's going to KO something with a 3 cost or 3k power or less. So basically, this is a Vista on an extra card. No body, but it only costs a 1, so that's insane too. Now, lots of people aren't playing this, but if you are playing Strawbeard, this is something to consider because it is searchable and you can get it off of, you won't want to really worry about triggers because you're picking up most of your life from your hand, but you've got Gum Gum Jet Pistol, still does the same thing, destroy something targets 6k or less. A lot of things can be killed with this. It's just a handy card. Even in the mirror, you can kill a Whitebeard, or you can kill a Marco and force them to drop a card to keep it, but also just immediately take it off the board in terms of whether it can block or not. So Jet Pistol, less used and very, very seldom seen in Whitebeard, but I think it's still a very stellar card. And those are the destructions, and now we're going to move on to the defensive cards before we go back and talk about the differences that you'll see between Strawbeard as well as Moby Dick, and then talk about, you know, kind of the matchups and ways to handle it. So first, some people do still use Chopper. I personally feel like Chopper is a little outdated. The main issue with this is when you take Chopper into your hand with life, it sucks. It's a non-counterable, And one cost, you do have to understand their place. One cost in this deck are very, 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 very good. When you play Whitebeard, you want to be able to follow it up with a one cost to defend yourself. But picking this up at the end of your turn is basically picking up a dead card. It's not counterable, and that sucks. As for blockers, I think Bart is a much better blocker. The guy does cost 2, but the most important part is on these turns where you're just carrying yourself with these big bodies, Bart is going to allow you to put 2 more Dawn on him, and then he can't be Robined, Seaquaked, Vista'd, or Whitebearded. And that's going to be very important in lots of your matchups. Next, this is more towards the Moby Dick Whitebeard version, but you've got Marco the Phoenix. We have talked about him before, so I won't go into him again. Unparalleled card if your deck is more Whitebeard crew focused. Then you've got the last 2 cards for the defense. Bang. You got Guard Point. This is going to go up 3k. Normally this was kind of like okay, this is a pretty good card, but not really better than Radical Beam. But in this case, Whitebeard using Guard Point is 9k. That's a very high number. They can't even swing neutral with like an Odin. This will just be like, nah, I'm out of it. So Guard Point, extremely good. Then you're also going to be able to hit cards like Radical Beam. Because you take your life very, 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 very fast, you're going to be able to get to points where you can use this very like halfway into the game or so. And going from a 6k to a 10k will block most attacks. And having 2 of these cards in hand almost ensures that your opponent cannot one-tap you, putting all their Dawn on their leader at any given moment. So as long as you manage their field, you are kind of immune from that. So let's actually talk about the main differences between Strawbeard and their focus, and then we're going to talk about matchups and, you know, just ways to deal with these decks on the playing side and the receiving side. So when it comes to Strawbeard, it's actually pretty interesting because you're going to essentially be utilizing the fact that you have a 1-drop searcher, and that 1-drop searcher pretty much glues your deck together. Yes, you're seeing 2 cards a turn, 1 off the top of your deck, 1 off your leader at the end. So 1 at the beginning, 1 at the end for the first 6 turns of the game. But on top of that, that Nami is going to be able to search out things like 2k Sanji, 2k Brook, Usopp if you choose to use it, Robin for the destruction, Zoro if you choose to take it for the rush, Luffy for the rush, Guard Point for the defense, as well as Radical Beam for the defense. So Nami is going to be able to further extend your reach. It's not enough that you're getting 2 cards per turn. You're going to be able to actually search out so many valuable cards to your strategy in Strawbeard. However, you shift gears and you're going to be looking at the Moby Dick version of the deck, which is supposed to just build up as many of these bodies. This guy needs to come down kind of closer to the end because he's much more susceptible to all sorts of removal. So sometimes you'll just have an established board and you'll play this guy for essentially 4. 3 to put him on board, 1 to put the Dawn in him, and you'll let the rest of your board do work. But meanwhile, you have Mark of the Phoenix, which is one of the stickiest cards in the entire game, being able to block, and then once you want to turn the switch on for Moby Dick, he'll be able to swing for 7k base if you don't have Rakuyo on board. You have things like the vanillas. You have Atmos as well as Kingdu, and those are going to be able to come down to be immense bodies. Atmos still susceptible to a whole lot of removal, but Kingdu being not susceptible to things like Jet Pistol, and even when he's turned sideways to be swung on, it takes a very big body to swing on him, and a 2k generally will bounce that. Next, you got Ace. Ace will go into both decks, both Strawbeard and this, but in this build, he just can get pumped by Rakuyo as well as Moby Dick, and he's going to be able to come off hard. And then you also have Seaquake, which is normally played more in the Moby Dick versions, because in the Strawbeard versions, you have access to Robin as well as Vista. So, yeah. And then you have cards that are going to be in both decks. Ace should have literally just been there. But Jozu, because he's a 2k rusher, like, cool. Vista as destruction. Ace as, you know, removal, low-key removal, swing into removal, but he softens them up. And then Whitebeard being the boss card that needs to be. So, you may be asking yourself, how does one go about facing Whitebeard? I'm going to start with that before going into Whitebeard tips. So, when you are playing against Whitebeard, because a lot of people, if you're playing Whitebeard, you already kind of know how you feel about a lot of things, but we'll still get to it. But if you're playing against Whitebeard, one of the most important things you have to understand is a lot of people will be like, oh, well, they're going to take their life anyway, so just let them take their life and then swing on them. I'm going to be real for you. If you just let Whitebeard take its own life without ever trying to press on the field, Whitebeard plays a lot of big bodies, and because it's saturated with 2Ks, as well as being able to play very easily into things like Radical Beam. When they put a beefy body on board, you are hard pressed to actually remove it unless they want to give it away. You need to remove it through effect because you are generally not doing it by battle. And so when you let Whitebeard just gain its cards to his hand, hoping that you'll just strike it when it only has 1 life, chances are, unless the Whitebeard drew exceptionally bad, you will not be able to shotgun Whitebeard. I've had people try to swing on me for 16k and just not get through because that's literally a Radical Beam or Radical Beam and a guard point or Radical Beam, and 3k counter. It's actually just really unfortunate. So when it comes to aggressing against Whitebeard, take your shots when you can. If you can eliminate cards, you want to, like I said, you want to get rid of cards if you can via effect. Your jet pistols, your Otamas, and your Vistas, you want to get rid of them that way, but then start swinging on Whitebeard for 6k. And I know a lot of you guys are saying magic numbers this, magic numbers that. Yes, when you swing on a 5k leader for 7k, you're draining the hand. But Whitebeard almost has like a Kaido-like mentality where swinging for neutral against Kaido was almost the same as swinging for 1k over, because they're still probably going to just use a 2k. They have so many 2ks in the deck, they're probably just going to use a 2k. Against Whitebeard, same thing. Swinging it for 6, watch them drop a 2k out of hand. At this point, you know any 6k that they don't want going through is going to generally garner a 2k out of hand. Now, the other part of this is you might be thinking, well, what's the point of just swinging at their stuff? Well, look, if you swing at Whitebeard, if you start pressuring Whitebeard early, the thing is, they're going to want to be at a certain life total by a certain point in the game, okay? If you let them hit Edward Newgate and they still have 1 life, it is incredibly different than if they land the Edward Newgate with 0 life, okay? Generally, 1 or 2 attacks are going to be able to get through. If 1 attack gets through and they have 1 life, they just take that life and then they just block your shotgun on the other one. Then nothing is big enough to get over 8k. If they're at 0 life, they have to withstand both those shotguns and they might fail on 1. This is the steps that you need to kind of take to whittle them down. If you let them take all their life by themselves, they're cruising into their end game where they can play Newgates or other things or bigger threats or some blockers and still have the Dawn left over to make the use out of what they're going to do. If you have dealt a damage on turn 2, dealt a damage on turn 3, dealt a damage on turn 4, you're going to accelerate the clock. You pressure them hard enough if your deck allows you to, like if you're a Zoro or opposing Whitebeard player, and you may have them at 0 life when they end their 3rd or 4th turn, which is not the turn they can play Whitebeard. They will be in the incredibly rough danger zone. And the thing about Whitebeard is his big body makes it so the math is a little easier for defending, but you get your opponent down to 1 or 0 life, and they're going to have to expend hand on attacks they normally wouldn't try to block because they're afraid of dying so quickly. And you'll find that it's a lot harder to play an ace when you're at 0 life with no established board than it is to play an ace when you have 2 life left, you know? So there's a thing about that. You do want to pressure Whitebeard where you can. I would just say don't make the mistake of going up to 8Ks trying to drain its hand when you could just be swinging for 6K steadily and watching the hand go down the same way. Make your board as wide as possible with these 7Ks or with these 6Ks and just watch Whitebeard's hand dwindle. Now, when you're playing Strawbeard, you are playing a red deck wins that just is very, very, very much so unable to be starved. That's the hard part. You will not be able to fight Whitebeard the same way you fought Zoro in set 1. Whitebeard will get all of its cards, and if it has the cards needed to beat you in, it will beat you in. Late game, whether you're playing versus Strawbeard or whether you're playing versus Moby Dick, things will start hitting those Kaido numbers of I can't out counter this. So you want to make sure that early game you make the most use out of your counters and your event cards, because once Whitebeard is swinging on you, you are just going to take it or you're going to block it if you have more than 1 blocker up, because if you don't, they're just going to pop that blocker. When 2 Whitebeards hit the board, you almost got to kiss your game goodbye. They are aggressively tearing through your weenies while swinging with minimum of 10K, maximum of 14, 15K, depending on what variant they're playing. It's rough. So you need to make sure that you are defending early, because late game, you're going to need that life. Now, coming as a Whitebeard player, you were on a clock, okay? And if you do not capitalize on this clock, your opponent will get to a point where sometimes they will just put 2 blockers on board. You do not have any way of getting rid of them. You don't have a Vista handy. You can't swing with Whitebeard because you're planning on playing this turn. You cannot close out against your opponent, and your opponent has 4 attacks lined up, and only 1 of them needs to hit to take you down from 0 life to losing the game. And so as a Whitebeard player, you have to be very, very conscious of how you're doing. Eventually, you will get got. Like, there's only so many cards in hand, and if you don't kill them turn after turn, if they start establishing blockers once you're already at that 0 life threshold, you will be put in a position where you are on sudden death and they are not. And that's very, very rough. So Whitebeard, momentum is everything. You need to build your deck with enough rush threats, because cards that come down and swing the very same turn that they come down are at a premium in a deck that sees double the cards of any average red deck. It just is. You need to get your game in the early and mid game, finishing off the game with Whitebeards and front-loaded rush threats. So that is actually pretty much a thing. If you don't like being aggressive, if you like holding back, if you like swinging when the moment's right, Whitebeard is probably not the deck for you, because Whitebeard forces you to press in the early game, mostly mid game though. Whitebeard is a very, very mid-range red aggressive deck, and so you need to make that your priority. If you feel like you can't win with Whitebeard, a lot of people say Whitebeard's too weird for them to play with. You need to get in your reps and just understand that when you're at 0 life, you should have your opponent within death 2 turns maximum. And those turns can really be mitigated by playing a Whitebeard once you're about to be at 1 life, making sure that you can survive that turn and then start cracking back with Whitebeard, which is why this card is a 4 hub. You need to see him to cap your late game. Without this, your late game gets incredibly rough when you're a 6k leader, you're trying to make plays, and you have 0 life. So you need to be playing 4 of these cards generally to make sure that your late game solidifies as well as possible. But generally, by the time you're taking your last life, your opponent should only be a turn or 2 away from death. And if that's not the case, you need to either look at what your opponent's doing or see how you're not pressing hard enough. Maybe shift up that style. But if you are playing against Whitebeard, like I said, consistent 6k pressure following into your late game. Don't be afraid when Whitebeard comes down. When Whitebeard comes down, just understand that if anything's tapped, this is your chance to divert attention and start slamming things. If a person is very, very smart as a Whitebeard player, they may play Whitebeard and not swing with any of their stuff, because the moment you play Whitebeard, you have to know, like, your opponent is going to deprioritize your face. It's just too big to swing at. So when you play Whitebeard, a smart player may be in a position to play Whitebeard and keep all their stuff untapped, knowing that all they have to do is defend their face, and next turn you get ran over. But if they do play like that, then yeah, you're kind of in a rough spot. Sometimes they just have it. It is your job at this point to see how many times you can drain your opponent's hand, and honestly, it's probably better off done with 8k swings if you can manage it, because you do not want to put yourself in a position to shotgun and then just have them destroy it. Like, you got to think about it in terms of math. If you swing with a 10k, that's 1 guard point or 1 radical beam. If you swing with a 10k, that could be 2 cards, but chances are playing Whitebeard 1 Dawn up, they're going to have that 1 drop. That's just the deck is saturated. They've seen a lot of cards, maybe even already searched it. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where you put 6 Dawn on something, 5 Dawn on your leader, just for them to be like, yeah, 1 card. You've essentially traded your turn for a singular card, and they are going to hit you with the hardest turn they have now that Whitebeard and multiple things are established. So it becomes tricky. We're going to have some more games on stream. We already do have some games, well, sorry, games on cam, but you can go back and check that. Either way, this is getting a little long in the tooth. I wanted to kind of cut it at 20 minutes, but I think it's going to be slightly over, but these videos kind of get in depth. Like I said, Whitebeard is very, 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 as far as the aggro decks go, most consistent, because you simply see the most cards. You have to reconceptualize how you deal damage and how you pressure your opponent, but whittling away at that hand and making sure that they cannot just wall you when they're at 0 life is the best way to go about facing Whitebeard. And when it comes to playing Whitebeard, I know this just sounds a little simple, but tempo is the name of the game. You need to pressure your opponents that when you reach that point where they could just normally alpha you, they are too busy worrying about not surviving the next turn to aggressively put everything they have into a turn that may get walled by your radical beams, your guard points, and your obsessive amounts of 2k. So with that being said, I hope this helped you guys. I hope you guys liked this everything you need to know about Whitebeard. when it comes to matchups across the board, Whitebeard is just overly aggressive. He really doesn't change his playstyle for anything. Even when you're facing the mirror, it's more just understanding that your opponent can hit as hard as you can, but you really don't change that much about what you're doing. Whitebeard will play cards that are a little too big for you to remove, so the removal's kind of out of the bag there. That's why cards like Sequake kind of suck in the mirror when it starts getting red flooded. But realistically, you just got to be good at the tempo. You got to understand. Get in those games, play as much as you can, and we'll try to get some aggro matches on camera so you guys can see the ebb and flow. Thank you guys, and I will see you the next time inside Join Universe X. And if you want to get any of the cards that you have seen in this video, go over to Mystic TCG. I'm going to play their ad right after this and then roll into the credits later. So let's talk about Mystic TCG, your one-stop shop for all your TCG needs. On the site, you can buy or pre-order plenty of sealed product for plenty of games. Just make sure though, if you're pre-ordering, to give it 3 to 4 months in advance to start looking, because sometimes the product is indeed hot, supply and demand, you know. And then if you want to buy singles, go on tcgplayer.com. There's going to be a link in the description where you can buy for the best value. And if you want to sell cards or collections, you can message them on their Facebook site so you can get the best bang for your buck on any type of way you want to buy or sell cards. And then while you're at it, you can use the code UNIXTCG at checkout to get even more of a discount. So hey, what are you waiting for? Check out Mystic TCG today.